Absolutely, I've already made some links there. So I also need to acknowledge that I wasn't supposed to be doing this. Jenny Begent, who is my head of social mission, was supposed to be talking to you about this. So I'm going to give you my version of her presentation. But I guess the first thing to know, and this has been fairly evident throughout the conversations we've already had, is that the Salvation Army is on a journey. So where we are with Rainbow Tick accreditation is one step in that journey. It's not the destination. So I just want to make that really clear. The first thing is Rainbow Tick. So Rainbow Tick is the world's first quality framework to help health and human services organisations become safe and inclusive for the LGBTIQ community. That's really important to know and understand that. The Rainbow Tick accreditation is about the way human service organisations, of which we are because we provide a range of community and social services, to make them safe and inclusive. It's not about how we do church. So I just want to make that really, really, really clear. This is about how we deliver safe and inclusive services. We are one of the largest service providers in Australia, right across the country. And so we, as a movement, have been working towards that. And in I can't read these notes because my eyes have changed its capacity to read because I'm getting old. I'm over 50. I might look up there. No, I can't read that either. This is going great, isn't it? So I might start to wing it, so someone can please keep me to time here. Our first service that was accredited was St Kilda Services. So if you know anything about Melbourne, St Kilda is, I think it was mentioned last night, in the middle of a large rainbow community. And so the services that they provide there... What was that, sweetheart? Slow down. Okay. I did have a very strong coffee just before this, so that might explain that. Thank you. So it started off at St Kilda Services. We got accredited in about 2014. The way, for those of you who know accreditation processes, you don't just get accredited once, you've got to continue to get reaccredited to ensure that the services that we're providing are fit for purpose, they're meeting the community need, and they're meeting current contemporary situations. So we had to get accredited as a movement. Halfway through last year, we were told that the way we were delivering our services was great, but the way we governed our services and our organisation was not, and so therefore we weren't recommended for accreditation. The practical outcome of that would mean that we would have to stop those services because we would no longer consider it a safe organisation to deliver those services. Now you can imagine that was a bit of a shock because our services in St Kilda and all of our social mission and community engagement services pride themselves on being inclusive and engaging the community that they serve, and they do that really well. Where we were let down, and I'm owning this as a leader of the movement, was our ability as an organisation to hold ourselves to account. So the Salvation Army then did a range of activities. That's that one there. So I'll just explain the Rainbow Tick standards as well. So what we are assessed on as a movement are those things up there. So organisational capability, workforce development, consumer participation, that means the people who are engaging our services at the service level, a welcoming and accessible organisation, disclosure and documentation, and culturally safe and acceptable services. So that's what we're measured on. And we failed on, just go back to that other one, sorry Phil, you're right. Some of the things around the organisation and some of the organisational things. So the way we run ourselves and manage ourselves is where we didn't quite make the mark. So if we move to the next slide, we put into place an action plan which covers all of those things there. Now it sounds and looks very corporate-y, and it has to be, because this is where, as a movement, we needed to improve in order to maintain accreditation. I won't go into all of those things there, but you can see there's a range of corporate principles about leadership and culture, the way we do complaints and physical environments and things like that. I want to pull out, if you move to the next slide, thanks Rebecca, This is not just a bunch of lefties in social services wanting to push the organisation along, although it's fair to say that the bunch of lefties in social services were actually a good prompter. But this is actually endorsed by our board too. So this is not a bunch of rabble-rousers on the edge of the movement. This is our board actually saying this is the direction we want to go. And so we've got a plan in place. Now we've just started the plan in order to implement that. And it covers a range of activities. The other thing about the plan is it's actually reports to the assistant to the Chief Secretary. For those of you who aren't aware of our new governance structure, the Chief Secretary is now like our Chief Executive Officer. So this plan reports directly into the Chief Executive Officer, not into any other mid-level management space. It reports into that space. The reason why I say that, I want to assure you that this has got high prominence within the movement in order for it to be delivered, because it's such an important thing. The two things as we made that plan, and I want to acknowledge the project control group. Now I'm going to start using some corporate-y kind of project-y words here, so I apologise for that. In order to do the number of changes that we had to get done, we created a project which had a project manager, and a range of resources were allocated to it. And one of the aspects that we had in that project group was, they're called, it's an SME. Scott, what's SME? Subject matter expert. Now that might sound a bit weird, but what's that code for is we actually had to have people who had lived experience on that project control group. So we weren't a bunch of people who had no lived experience was organising it. We actually had people who had lived experience. And so I want to acknowledge the work of that group to help the movement be the best it can be for the rainbow community. And those two things that came out of that, and Ellie, who you mentioned before, one of these things, which I'm really glad you did, but the first one has come out in all the testimonies. One of the things we had to learn as a movement was that exclusion is assumed unless inclusion is explicit. So I'll say that again. Exclusion is assumed unless inclusion is explicit. So we can't just say we're non-discriminatory. We have to be more than that, because people in the community their starting position is that we are a discriminatory organisation, we are a discriminatory church, and that came out really well in the way you spoke about your experience, Ellie. So I want to say thank you for that. Super brave, but it also came out in some of the other testimonies. So that was one of the fundamental things that the organisation leadership had to kind of make a little switch in their head. And that was a challenge. Can I just say that? That was a challenge. The other thing that came out through our subject matter expert was this idea, and again, Ellie, who you brought this out in the way you testified, is that the church at its best is like a family. That's when it's at its best. What the subject matter expert was saying, that the rainbow community is seen as a family. So people run from a place where they don't feel like they're part of family into the rainbow community, because that is a family. And so her encouragement to us was to be more like a family and create an environment where people can feel like they're actually part of a family and part of being engaged and loved and all those kind of things as you do with a family. So while the standards and the things we've done all might seem really corporate-y, that's the heart of it. We want to be known as a family where people are loved and accepted. And that process, that switch, was really important for the leadership to go on. So if we can just move to the next slide there. Go back to the other one, sorry, Rebecca. So part of that is understanding and hearing from the rainbow community to make sure that we are doing the best we can be and doing all we can be. So we've got some things up there. I won't go into them in any great detail. I can provide some more detailed notes later if you're interested. But we have one of the integral elements of this new way of being, a new way of leading, is the lived experience and participation resource. So for those of you who've done any kind of work around communications, you'll know that quite often what we always do, and we call it consultation, is inform people. We tell people what's happening, and we call it consultation. What the Salvation Army is not unique in that. I just want to flag that this is organisation-wide. What we're trying to do is move up the ladder to involve, collaborate, empower, where our community actually are an active involvement and participants in the way we design and deliver our services. That's a challenge because often the way we, and I say community services more broadly, are structured is that we are the experts to come and deliver the service to the person who is not the expert. We've got to flip that around. People with lived experience are experts in their own lives and have the capacity to actually engage in what their service that they need looks like. We've got to change our systems and processes and structures to enable that. Not to enable it, to encourage it to happen. So that's what that's about. We're still very early in that space. Some places do it really well, and St Kilda I would probably highlight as one of them. But we're trying to make this consistent across the country in all of our services. Next, thanks. Slide. We have a workforce plan to help us to deliver these services well. We're starting it, I guess, again. We're at the early stages of this. One thing that this is not just in the rainbow space, this is actually across all of our spaces. The Salvation Army is not a very diverse organisation. If you look at our employees, our officers and our volunteers, probably more diverse in our volunteers than the other two spaces. The workforce plan is to try to address that. I don't know what that looks like yet, but certainly that's the intention, to become more representative of the communities that we serve. Next slide. It also talks about the way we support our officers, staff, employees and volunteers about engaging the community. So there's a range of learning environments, training, etc., to help us to be and understand the best inclusive people that we can be. We're also actually putting two positions into the organisation, one within social mission, which is about Rainbow Tick managing, so making sure that we're actually on board with that, but also within the assistant to the Chief's office is a diversity, I'm not sure what the right word is, but I'm going to call them manager, to ensure that the organisation is as a response to all issues of diversity, including rainbow spaces. Next slide, thanks. The other aspect to what we're trying to do is to be better at engaging the community at all levels, right across our services. Again, we do this really well in some spaces, but not so well in other spaces. So we're trying to bring this and make it a consistently delivered space. Next one, thanks. Now this is the super exciting stuff. This is about developing policies and procedures to ensure that we have a clearly visible standard that we can hold people account to and hold ourselves account to. We can have all the nice words in the world, but if we don't have a system and process that actually requires that to happen, it won't happen. It won't happen through goodwill. This is about us as a movement, as an organisation, putting a stake in the stand, saying this is who we're going to be and this is how we're going to do it. I'm not a policy and procedures writing person, but the people who are going to develop that are going to make sure that we are able to be held account to that. Next slide, thanks. One of the last thing I just wanted to touch on is part of the process about being an inclusive service provider, inclusive community, is the visible engagement and positive welcome that our services, and I would also argue our church, and I think Colin will probably talk about that a bit more, to the community. So we've developed a range of collateral, which is what the word is that's often used, to help our services and our churches to have that physical display. And I love the fact that behind me there's a rainbow flag, and I saw a couple of rainbow flags out the front there. So that's what we're talking about here. For those of you who aren't in the rainbow community or in any other diverse community, symbols are very, very important. They might seem a small thing if you're not part of the community, but if you are, that shows a sign of inclusiveness and welcome. So I want to encourage everybody here in this room and everybody online that if there's only one thing you actually do, it's that physical inclusive, welcoming sign. But there's a range of things that we've developed. When I say we, I mean the communications team in support with everybody else to help us do that. If you just want to flick through the slides, Rebecca, there's brochures, next one. We've got to adjust the privacy policy. You can't see the detail there, but we've done a fair bit of work in that. I might just pause there. I'm not sure if Colin, you're coming up to talk, but one thing I just also want to acknowledge, which I referred to earlier, was that the board has endorsed this, and the board is going to hold the management accountable. And Colin, for those of you, although he's the core officer at Sunshine, he's also a board member. So he may have some reflections as a board member on this process as well. So he might not, but I'm encouraging that he might. So that's all I wanted to say. Happy to take any questions, but I'm not sure if we're doing that just yet or if we're not doing that at all. Go straight to Colin.
Thanks, Stuart. So if I do put the board governance hat on for a minute, I can absolutely confirm that we are, as a board, at that level of governance of the Salvation Army in Australia, deeply committed and unified around getting to the line of ensuring that we do get our Rainbow Tick accreditation. It's incredibly important to us, and we will fight tooth and nail to get that accreditation. And look, I think at this particular time, and we know God works in and through time and season. This is a season and this is a time where particular people have been placed in positions to be able to really affect the kind of change that we really need, especially in this inclusion space. And I believe in that, and I really am very confident that at a governance level we are, as I said, going to fight to the end to get and achieve what we want to achieve. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm going to take the board hat off. I'm going to put my core officer hat on. Thank you for the invite to be here and to share with you. I feel at home. It's a fair way to get here from Sunshine over in the west, but I do feel at home. I feel even more at home for the fact that this particular core finds itself in Bald Hill Road. I've been an ally of the Rainbow community for 30 years. That didn't just happen. I grew up in the east side of Melbourne, over this side, in Camberwell. See an old Camberwell face there. And I went to a very exclusive school, a school that was toxic in its boy culture, its elitism, its privilege and homophobia. And I was a part of that. I have to own that. Fortunately, my first real job was working in the Salvos as a housing worker in homelessness, and I had the wonderful privilege to get to know a lot of good people and work alongside a lot of fantastic workers who happen to identify as being within the LGBTQI community. And so my journey really began there in having my eyes open. My Bodhi Tree Enlightenment experience or Damascus Road experience really came out of working alongside good people who were no different to me in who we were and what we were doing, except that they identified differently. So for 30 years I've been an ally, and that's been a fantastic journey for me. Long story short, in 2015, Captain Phuong and I, who is there, we were commissioned and we were appointed to Sunshine Corps in the west side of Melbourne. There was a little trepidation in me, knowing that I've always strongly pinned my rainbow colours to the mast and put my stake in the ground firmly. There's a little trepidation how that might work and how that might go in a place like Sunshine. It's good to see you, fellow Westie, there. And we came to Sunshine, and I thought, well, look, I'm just going to come out with this, and I'm going to hit them hard. So, very first sermon series we did at Sunshine was on the individual colours of the rainbow. And we went through week by week all these colours. And not only focusing on the symbolism and the spirituality of the colours, but each colour at a time actually creating a physical rainbow on the back wall of the core of our worship hall. We're so blessed. You know, in so many ways, God prepares ground before. And the people at Sunshine were so lovely, so accepting, so grounded, and so inclusive that in a lot of ways I was preaching to the converted. And that was really lovely. And we have really built on wanting to establish an intentional, inclusive community of faith at Sunshine Salvos, not only within the core, but also, of course, within our fellow mission expressions, in our housing service, in what was Westcare, now our youth services, within E+, within all of the range of mission expressions in Sunshine, very intentionally committed to inclusion. And so the process of that for Phuong and I has been relatively easy, to be honest. It's not to say that there hasn't been moments where we've encountered resistance. I certainly reflect back a few years back to when the Safe Schools issue came up, and there were some concerns raised from people, well-meaning and good people within our core, who had some questions about stuff that they'd heard, things that they'd absorbed that weren't necessarily accurate. And so we had opportunities to talk through and discuss those things. I think particularly of the time when we had the same-sex marriage referendum, the yes vote. And that was a great opportunity for our core. And I remember particularly one Sunday after a service, we had a forum, an open space where people could share their views. And there are some in Sunshine Salvos who had real concerns, and I'm sure voted no for same-sex marriage, but respectfully shared those views. And that was a really healthy time for us to grow together. Didn't mean that we're all uniform in our thinking. But when is a church ever uniform in its thinking anyway? That's who we are. We're diverse. And so we have solidified and worked on intentionally developing our inclusion. I love, and I'm glad you pointed it out, Stu, the flag and the symbols. It's very important. I know at Sunshine we have a rainbow flag right next to our front door and a sign that says you're welcome. I reckon within the next fortnight I'll be getting one of those flags, and that'll be up in our hall as well. You know, and you can talk to Stu about the amazing work that's been done with RAP and all of the movement and the positive change that's happened in that space in terms of symbols. The core and expressions now, to my best knowledge, all have Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander flags and acknowledgements. We long for the day that is the same within our inclusion space with a rainbow flag. Amazing. So we continue on, and I think, yes, we're an inclusive community at Sunshine Salvos. Do we sit back and rest on our laurels with that, pat ourselves on the back? No, we don't. We keep moving forwards. We keep intentionally trying to do things better. We keep learning, and we keep having an attitude of openness to learning. And for us at Sunshine, it is really now a process of not just being inclusive, but we really are, and especially coming out of COVID and all of that messiness, I think Phuong and I are very committed to taking our faith community from a level of inclusion to a very real level of affirmation for the people who come. Yes, we're open. We welcome anyone and we accept anyone. But we want it to be more than that. We want to say to people when they're a part of us in our family, who you are, how God made you, fearfully and wonderfully. That's okay. You don't have to change anything about who you are to be a part of our family. We accept you as you are. And it doesn't matter how you identify, it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter what relationship you're in or what that looks like, we accept you and we love you. We affirm you. That's our continual movement towards our people at Sunshine Salvos, not only welcoming, accepting and loving people, but affirming them. That's our process at this time. I want to wrap up with a story. And this is a lovely story that literally is a story in motion because it's still writing its own chapters day by day as we speak. We all know that during COVID in our ministries, particular challenges and obstacles, but there's also been those silver linings in the cloud moments where we really have thought and discovered, wow, we have actually something good here that's happening, even because of COVID, as a result of that. And one of those silver linings was meeting this young guy named Tiff. We run a community meal program on a Friday night, and through COVID, we met a whole lot more new people than we'd ever met before. And I'm sure many of you relate to this. Because when COVID came and it shut down jobs, we had floods of international students come to Sunshine Salvos. Tiff was one of those international students, young Malaysian guy who identifies as being transgender. And that didn't come out straight away, obviously. That's come, and our journey, our dialogue with Tiff has, through trust and time and relationship developed. But Tiff has come on a weekly basis over the last 2 years to us on a Friday evening, and we've assisted him with meals. But a watershed moment came last year, early last year. I had the real privilege to be able to march and attend the Midsummer Festival. Hey, Chris. And who should I meet? Who should I see at the Midsummer Festival but Tiff? And I could see sort of him thinking, oh, you're the leader of the Salvo Church. What are you doing here? It's like, well, why wouldn't I be here? I'm here to support this. I'm an ally of this. And so that was a real moment where trust was gained. Stones were rolled away. And we have grown in our relationship with Tiff. We talk about the next level of affirmation that we want to really achieve at Sunshine Salvos. I embody that in a sense in a person like Tiff because at this very moment, Tiff is actively pursuing funding, set up a GoFundMe page and is fundraising to begin the process of his gender reassignment. So he wants to get the top surgery done, but it costs $10,000 or some crazy amount, and so he's got to raise that money. We're going to support him financially with that, and we encourage our Sunshine Salvos core to do the same. We've got his poster up on our main notice board, support Tiff's top surgery. It's fantastic. It's got a QR code on it. You just scan on it and you're in. And he's such a lovely guy. I'm still working through, it was actually only a couple of months ago that Tiff actually came to realise that Phuong and I are married. He didn't know that, which that's a common thing for us. We kind of look different. And I'm still a bit suspicious about Tiff because he still, even though he knows we're married, he's still trying to pick up Phuong and ask her out on dates and things. So I mean, I love him, but I'm still watching him. But we love journeying with friends like Tiff because they really do embody who we want to be as a faith community, just as people who love people and accept people and affirm people for who they are. So our journey at Sunshine Salvos goes on, but we really, and as a real intentional focal point, really bringing our people into that place of affirming anyone who comes, especially from the LGBTQI community. And it's a joy just to be on the journey alongside like-minded, like-hearted, good people like yourselves in fighting that good fight. We are on the right side of history, we know that. And we are building that critical mass. And it's not only at the grassroots, but it's also at the governance level as well. So I am absolutely confident that we are heading in the right direction and that we're going to see good things happen in the days ahead. Thank you for the opportunity of sharing.